Mureba tayari wese tumurunji nakwakira umushahezi irizoba twahirwa twatahisa umwebembezi wamwe ahabina bibe butegeki ebikuru ebyosereho umuhango mukande bitwireho Hon.Jimmy Akena kandi umuringo ngo gumwe umwebembezi w'ekibina cy'ibyo butegeki umyishengero umuparlamenti yo murundo gw'ikumi na gumwe ihanga rya Uganda rukikira abantu barira City East Division ntwenda kutera tochi umbye butegeki ibiri mu ihango mu okubera kugenda nagoteireho nebyakuba nibiretera abanya-Uganda umwe okwerarikira atereze bitekateko by'inko mwebembezi w'ekibina nko mwebembezi w'abantu urukujwekera abantu nko kunanagambiri nango hireho neco nko munya-Uganda ungereze maze mukwereze abanza taramutiyeho kake na bwanyuma tugumize mu na program. Hon.Jimmy, we're glad to host you.
I'm glad to appear on Tayari West and it's good to be here.
Yes, I want us to start from where you are from right now. I am reliably informed that you've been in Bushenyi.
Yes.
What took you to Bushenyi and why Bushenyi?
In 1980, after 9 years of exile, my father returned. I accompanied him on that trip and we landed here in Mbarara, but the first rally we had was in Bushenyi. And therefore, when UPC was elected in the election of December of that year, subsequently, May 27th became a Heroes' Day and became a pilgrimage where all of Uganda would come and descend on Bushenyi. And to be a day of coming together and refocusing, but you see UPC members coming together in Bushenyi. So we've been commemorating that day of 27th May. And yesterday being 27th May, we were back in Bushenyi to touch base with some of the members there, but also now to renew our commitments which we had made to ourselves and to the country and prepare ourselves for the 2026 election, which is roughly same time away, because those elections 1980 was in December. This election of 2026 is going to be in January, like a month apart.
Honorable, you're talking about the commitments as a party.
Yes.
What are some of those commitments that you still have to fulfill to the people of Bushenyi?
No, you see, there was a lot of commitments. One was the unity, right? We came together and we professed unity of the country, which is something which is very important. I still feel it's important as we head into elections. We need to be united. We need to be focused. We need to also avoid issues which can split or create divisions. And those are some of the issues which came out clearly in that statement. And one touching bit which I read from the actual statement which was delivered in 1980 was, there was a statement that we either perish together or live together. Now, I want us to live together and to have an abundant life across board. So those are the sort of commitments which we would love to renew.
Looking back at the Uganda then, and now the Uganda that we are living in right now, do you think even when the UPC party is no longer in power of this country, the commitments that the party had then have been fulfilled by this ruling government?
No, I will not say being fulfilled, and that's why we're also in politics, because we give alternatives, and in an election you come with your alternatives. Yes. One thing I discovered yesterday while I was on the program on one of the radios was of the 15 government-aided secondary schools in Bushenyi, 9 were built by UPC back then. So 6 were built under this government.
Under this government.
But 9 were built under UPC. And those 9 are still providing education to the people, right? So yes, those are the sort of things which I love to be associated with. Of course, we have Chidegata Hospital, we have Itojo Hospital. Those were also UPC-built hospitals. When they're still serving the people, I'm glad to say, yes, I'm glad to have been a member of UPC, and I want to push forward that can we have more such services, which will continue for generations. Such services continue. Whether UPC is in power or not, we are still benefiting from some of those services which were put to help the people. So all of us in our politics, we come, we add to the collective, and others will come and add on top of what we're going to do. So for heading towards the next round of elections, I want to see more done, not only in Bushenyi, but across the whole of Uganda.
Like you have said in your intro, we are getting closer to the electoral period. It is boiling. And you've declared your intentions as someone who would want to still lead the UPC party as its president. What are the intentions of UPC in this country?
The intention of UPC, the success of UPC is the success of Uganda. Like I've highlighted, on the issue of education, health, we have had our successes. We've also had a lot of successes in the area of economics, especially in the areas of agriculture. We had support for the cooperatives. And those cooperatives were extremely powerful. I think one of the most powerful in the country was Banyakole Kwetarana. That was a very powerful cooperative. But we had cooperatives across the country which was helping improve the standard of living of the citizens. Now, across board, we want to see quality education. We want to have quality health care. We want to see people being able to earn a living and to raise a family. So across the whole issue is, can we have a politics?
Let us look at the political atmosphere in this country. Yesterday, we registered a new political party in the name of the Democratic Front. Looking at all those opposition political parties that do not at one time accept to come together and serve Ugandans, like you people in the opposition always say that you have an alternative for Ugandans. Can't you bring all your programs together and serve Ugandans as one bloc? We're looking at the unity of the opposition in the country. Do you think it is possible for us to have a united opposition so that we can have Ugandans served by one political party in the opposition?
I don't see the interest or the purpose of having one political party.
Opposition political party.
I don't see the reason of why you should have
opposition political parties, but united as one to serve the purpose that you people talk about. Because when you look at what the UPC is saying, it is almost the same as what the other political parties are saying.
I disagree strongly, because UPC is a party which is left of center, i.e. our policies are on a different angle. Most of the political parties which I've seen around are most center-right parties, which are ideologically and philosophically different to UPC. Now, I have no problem with everybody coming and putting their agenda to the people of Uganda. It's the people of Uganda to decide. Now, in January, we are having 2 elections. And then, of course, the elections will continue in the local government, so the elections will continue. But the important election which people are focused on, we're going to have a presidential and parliamentary elections in January. Now, both those elections are different, and the approaches can be different. Example, on a presidential level, the Ugandan constitution provides for a 50+1 formula. Previously, whatever the opposition did, there was no even opposition bloc which went beyond 50%. So in that purpose of a presidential, it serves no legitimate purpose to field one candidate, because the law itself of the 50+1 will guide us. If after the first round of election there's no candidate who has gone at 50+1, then the law provides that the top 2 candidates will go for second round. Now, doing the second round is where you must pick a side. If you're number 3, 4, 5, 6, you must pick a side. Which side are you going to stand with in the rerun? So that in itself defines on the issue of presidential. If you now bring the issue of parliamentary, I think their political opposition needs to be more careful on how we handle parliamentary candidates, because sometimes we are fielded in the same constituency and created opportunities to get a dominant NRM which is able to pass even very major legislation without the need of having other political players. So to restrict it to less than 2/3, that is where now parties need to talk to each other and know where your strengths are and where you're able to deliver. That conversation will be important on having this, preventing a supermajority, that we will have to have conversations. When we're dealing with critical issues, it will not be possible for a single party to do so alone. They will now have to liaise with other political players. So that is the way I look at it. Presidential and parliamentary, totally different. But for presidential, I have no problem with people fielding their candidates, because the law itself will regulate us eventually.
Thank you. Let's look at the newly passed IPOD law. that guides the National Consultative Forum subscription and everything within that law. As a leader of a party, and as someone who is participating in the leadership of this country, do you think that law is for the good of the politics of this country, or it is bringing down the opposition, as some of the opposition leaders have come up to say?
I would not say it's bringing down position, but what has been put in that law, one could not have passed the test of IPOD. I have been a chair of the IPOD summit. I have hosted the summit where the first summit where we had, including President Museveni, attend. It took a lot of consultation. Every step of the way you must consult, because each party have their own views. Now, to keep it together up to the level of a summit, it took a lot of effort. Now, how this law came, I, as a member of the summit of IPOD, had no news of it. I find it on the floor. And the person bringing it has had no interaction with IPOD. IPOD brings together political parties with representation in parliament who are ready to talk to one another. So you cannot compel people to talk. Right? Because even the issue of saying to talk, not to talk is a way of talking.
It's also talking.
Yes. So how do you say that you must talk? I can come and sit in a room and keep quiet. I've sat in the room. We have not dialogued. Now, the inter-party organization of dialogue brought the issue of dialogue. And being somebody who's been in the summit, only something which is mutually beneficial can go through the IPOD structure. Now, that didn't happen. We suddenly find it on the floor of parliament. We find our colleagues in NRM being whipped. But I, as a member of IPOD, as a member of the summit, and even where we have the council, which has the secretary generals and other members, it never sat. We have a liaison officer, has never been informed. All of a sudden you find it on the floor of parliament. So I felt that this one was done wrongly, and the tool of putting it under IPOD is the wrong place. You can amend the law if you want to amend the law to deal with something else, but to put it under IPOD, you are actually taking IPOD or misusing IPOD for what it was created for. And there I have disagreed strongly. I disagreed on the floor of parliament, and I still disagree that this law was not brought in good faith. It is wrongly placed, and it will harm matters of dialogue.
What do you envisage in this law? To be specific, what are your concerns and worries in this IPOD law?
In this IPOD law, one, you have compelled people to talk. You have put a criteria to be able to access funds, which includes something called tolerance. How do you measure tolerance? There is no quantifiable way where you can measure tolerance. Now, if you put something which is not measurable, now, how do you say that somebody is falling short of the law? So you brought in things which don't make sense. As far as IPOD is concerned, I am a firm believer in dialogue. I've been involved in dialogue. All along I've been in dialogue. Whatever the case, whatever the politics, I've always been open to dialogue. But you don't do it like this. And you don't use this IPOD which we have created. For me, it's like a child. Now, this child was not ready to be taken into such an issue to force them into something which they are not even versed for. So I have opposed it, and I'll continue to oppose it, because it is not going to enhance the democracy. It's not going to enhance dialogue. Dialogue is a lot of effort. A lot of effort, a lot of listening, and a lot of consultation. And especially where it's a group with group dynamics, you have to listen to all the players in order to keep them on board to reach a certain point. As somebody who has gone through it, nothing happened in this particular case. And in fact, for the last 4 years, we have not had meetings of IPOD. So this was an ambush. And for me, it was brought in bad faith, and therefore, I think you saw me on the floor of parliament. I was not amused.
The fact that you've taken some time without meeting as leaders within the IPOD, do you think it was imperative for us to have this law to coerce you people, the leaders of different political parties, maybe to come together and talk about issues for the good of this country?
Now, do you know who has been in the chair for the last 4 years that we have not met? NRM has been in the chair. So if you're going to penalize somebody for not meeting, the one who calls the meeting is the one in the chair. So the council meeting is called by the NRM Secretary General when NRM is in the chair. When UPC is in the chair, it's a Secretary General who calls the council meeting. Now, our MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, is that in the 6 months of leadership, because rotation, you must have at least 2 council meetings and 1 summit meeting. So what we have been doing in practice is you have your agenda, you pass it through the first council, you go through this issue, you go through consultation, you go through the second council meeting, by that time you're prepared. Once it clears the council, then it now goes to the summit, which I was able to do, Ma has been able to do, NRM has not done. So if you're penalizing people for not meeting, and if the law is to defund people who do not promote dialogue,
yes,
then you need to start by looking in the mirror and sorting things out at home. Because NRM has been in the chair, we have not met. Can the law compel NRM to meet?
Of course, the law is not, it doesn't stop on anyone. It is a law that guides everyone in this country. And if we bring it to the level of IPOD, someone would expect the same law to apply on the NRM.
But NRM already, on our MOU, which we have been working with, IPOD was formed in 2009. The first summit we had was in 2018, with Jimmy Akena in the chair. Then we've had subsequently 2 other summits. Then we have gone quiet. So, who's at fault?
Jimmy Akena, as someone who led the IPOD then, like you've said, what would you put out as your achievements as a leader of IPOD then?
The issue which I brought on IPOD, which I was able to steer through, was the sort of support which political parties would require to be able to carry their functions. What I was marketing is that as Uganda, we need strong, viable, functional political parties. That in case of anything that happens, the political parties are able to galvanize the people and give direction. So mine was, how do we strengthen the parties? And that's what I shared with the other political parties. We came with a formula, we came with an agreement, and that is what formed the agreement. Now, the formula which was brought in this law was the correct formula which we created under that basis, which started with my leadership and continued under Mao, where we now put figures to it. That formula is correct. But that formula was supposed to be applied in 2020. And in 2020, before the same committee, at that time chaired by Oboth, I made the same presentation for that funding formula, the funding aspect. I made the exact same presentation to that committee of legal. That time was chaired by Oboth. It was ignored. And what happened now is the extra funding which we negotiated through the IPOD, because at that time we're getting 10 billion per annum shared across the political parties in parliament. Now, under this new arrangement, the funding was to increase from 10 to 35 billion. And the funding formula was what was put. I put it to the same committee. The committee ignored it because they preferred to use the formula which was on numerical strength. So NRM was looking that of this 35 billion, we're going to get 80% of it, the rest of you can go hang. Now, when they now want to defund particular parties on the eve of election, that they don't want these parties to have the muscle, you now bring the formula, but you apply it wrongly and you put conditionalities which cannot stand. I can't support you there.
Thank you very much. Let's look at another law that, another bill that was passed on the same day, the UPDF Amendment Bill of 2025. It has brought fear in the minds of a section of Ugandans. As a leader, do you think the UPDF Amendment Bill that we now wait for the President to assent to is relevant to the rule of law in this country?
No. You see, I don't see the circumstances where you say that the court system has completely failed, that you need to apply military justice. And what transpired, if I take it back recently, in the by-election which took place in Kawempe.
In Kawempe North.
Yes. We had joint anti-terrorism task force, JAT members, on the field of a political, we'll call it a political match. Now, for me, that raises a lot of problems, because when I interact with people now, there are parents who threaten their kids. When a kid is misbehaving, JAT is going to come for you, and you see the kid keeping quiet. Now, JAT is an elite force to deal with these hardcore terrorists who have attacked Uganda before. Now, if kids are being scared about JAT, now suppose a kid is somewhere and sees something suspicious, who is the kid going to go to? Can they go to JAT? They are fearing JAT.
They are fearing JAT.
The pictures of JAT with these cables, beating people, masked and whatever. Now, that is an important tool. JAT is an important tool. That when the terrorist comes, those are the ones you want in the front line. Those are the ones you want to deal with that issue. Now, the people are scared of them. The very people who should be the eyes and ears of the whole society. When something is happening, you should report such issues. So you now put JAT in an awkward position. Now, to bring in military justice in a political equation, let us debate the politics. Let us debate the policies. Let us disagree, but don't try to mix these issues. If you're having armed groups, you know, like let's say the gangs of Haiti, armed with whatever, you can say yes in that circumstance. Because you're having gangs with assault weapons and, you know, actively interfering. But that's not the case. A lot of the time it is politicians who are ending up before that one. And in the military hierarchy, even if you are justice here and then you know that the high command, the commander-in-chief has this position, what justice are you supposed to? Because military command, follows hierarchy. That if it is now decided by the high command, commander-in-chief, that Jimmy Akena is a threat to society, what justice am I going to get from a subordinate officer of whatever rank to handle such a matter? So it should be dealing with issues of discipline or whatever, something where something has gone wrong, somebody has robbed, a soldier has taken a gun or whatever, you can deal with that one. But politically, how are you going to deal with an issue where if I bring a political issue which you don't agree with, but I feel strongly enough about it, what happens?
No, but we are talking about the law whose motive, according to how it stipulates, do not talk about anything to do with politics. But whenever we talk about this recently passed bill, politicians, you politicians, try to cling it to politics. We are talking about armed criminality, people who put on things that resemble those ones of military. How would we bring politics into that?
Of recent, how many people have ended up before the court-martial? The most prominent, which everybody's mind, is Kizza Besigye. And even now Kizza Besigye was picked from Kenya, it is an issue. Kizza Besigye, picked from Kenya, brought to Uganda, taken to court-martial. The initial charge, I wondered how it is going to work. Because, for example, if I'm in Kenya and I commit a traffic offense in Kenya, you cannot bring me and charge me in Uganda for a traffic offense.
For breaking the traffic rules in Kenya.
Yes. Now, initially, a pistol with so many rounds, okay. If that would be in Kenya, he has committed an offense illegally, hold the possession. But that itself does not work in Uganda. Now, of course, the charges have been amended. So, clearly, there's been a high-profile issue of people who are before the court-martial. Now, many from the political sphere are there. I have not heard anybody complaining about a errant soldier who shot up and being taken before the court-martial. Right?
Yes.
It has been the politicians who have been taken there. And so the threat or the reality is that a politician expects it to come in that direction. There are many people who have also been taken, some not charged, some held or whatever, then eventually taken to prison, and you know their case is somewhere halfway here or there. I remember after the election of 2021, the last summit we had at Kololo airstrip. And one of the issues which I worked with Norbert Mao was a lot of consultation within, and that time we were able to speak to the president, and 54 people who had been arrested from NUP were released, right, on the clearance of the president. So that whole issue of the court, for me and for many, it is taken in bad faith. And it came around the issue, of course, the issue of Kizza, but still the charge has been brought back. So, yes, as a politician, we are feeling the threat, and we know that it's likely to come and grab many of us.
You're heavily worried.
No, I'm ready for it.
If you look at
I'm ready for it. If it comes, it will come.
If you look at countries like Haiti that just mentioned, and you also look at the issue of cattle rustling in the Karamoja region, don't you think such laws are necessary for us to have harmony in this country?
Now, you brought the issue of cattle rustling of Karamoja. That one, you've opened a whole Pandora's box, because that is one of the matters which is still, we are still quarreling about, because a lot of us lost our animals in 1987. We are now in 2025. Almost 40 years later, we are still dealing with issues of compensation. And now, on all these issues, it was not the lack of a law which caused us to lose animals. It's not the lack of the law. So if it does not work for us, it may work for some other people, but I've already lost my animals. I am still asking for animals. I'm asking for demand for compensation.
But you losing animals then does not mean that someone should lose animals in 2030.
There's no animals to be taken now. In most of the places, there's no animals, just a few scattered here and there. The bulk of the animals are already gone. So if you're closing the barn door, I mean, after the animals are gone, you're closing the kraal and the animals are being taken. What are you closing?
Within the kraal.
What are you closing? We are dealing with the issue, how do we restock? How do we deal with the issue of compensation? How do we redevelop that whole cattle economy in the whole sub-region? So I think we need to address it more holistically and not bring this law and say this is going to help us. How is it helping us when we've already lost?
When the cows are no more.
They're not there. We're still looking for them. Nearly 40 years later, we're still looking for them. And now 40 years, the whole generation is gone. In fact, 2, 3 generations are gone. But we still need it to be sorted out. And that's the things we can talk about, we can address. But the law does not help. It's not going to help any issue with animals and whatnot. We have coexisted with the Karamoja since time immemorial. Even tomorrow and in 10 years, we are still going to be neighbors. So we have to find ways how we're going to coexist.
But the government cannot let you fight time and time.
Government has not helped us when we had the animals. Government has not helped us to recover the animals. I don't expect government through this law is going to help us. But we're available to talk.
Okay, let's look at the issue of the parliament where you serve. The people of Rila East Division gave you 5 years to serve them. And we're getting closer to the end of the 5 years. Your tenure is getting to an end. You as a leader, a member of parliament, and the parliament, the 11th parliament that you have served in, do you think, if you to rate yourself, have you served Ugandans within these 5 years?
Parliament is not the parliament I entered in the 8th parliament. There's a lot which has changed. The areas where we have concerns, the quality of some of the debate, the time available for some of those key matters are many issues which I feel that could be better. But I have now served, this is my 4th term. I'm going to end of the 4th term. I've informed my constituents that I'm not seeking a 5th term, in that I'm offering myself for the presidency of the country. So I'm not going for re-election at parliamentary level. But I still have a concern about parliament, because the parliament is the National Assembly of Uganda. I expect parliament to handle matters in a particular way of concern. Now, like the 2 bills. The one of IPOD, I was particularly annoyed because I have been in IPOD. I have really worked for IPOD, right? I consider this IPOD baby as a child which I have nurtured, and what was done to it was not right. At least we could have been spoken to, we could have advised, but what was done, it is not tenable. And it's going to put IPOD in a very awkward position. I pray that the president does not assent to this. And since he's in the chair, let him call a summit and we give our views. Because what was passed cannot pass any of the IPOD tests. So you pass it in parliament, but it will never pass in IPOD, because the IPOD is not structured to deal with such an issue. And when you want to deal with the issue of financing, you can address financing separate from IPOD.
From somewhere else.
You can address it differently. So that amendment definitely have a problem with. So Parliament can do better and should do better. And it should be a point where the people of Uganda can get some hope or relief because Parliament is supposed to bring together leaders from across the country, to bring the views across the country. Let us come and address issues which fall before us as leaders of the time and address them adequately. So yes, I have problems with the Parliament, but it is what it is. As
a senior legislator, what are some of those highs that you can give to the 11th Parliament?
11th Parliament, I have not seen the highs. In all honesty, I haven't seen them.
Let's look at the UPC party. As a leader who is vying for that topmost post within the party, I want us to get back to what you still intend to do as a party that led Uganda then and still wants to lead Uganda. What do you think are those specific issues in this country that need to be tackled by UPC specifically?
Okay. I'll give you, let me start with an issue like education. We have roughly maybe 10 million kids under UPE. UPE in itself is a concept that these are kids from homes where there's no resource. So government needed to step in and support the education of these kids. Contribution of government now is 20,000 shillings per student per year. So 10 million kids do not have anybody who can put in 20,000 shillings for a whole year. When you try to put your head around that one, our whole concepts of poverty and whatever does not make sense. Because I need to ask now, if the 10 million kids who have no parent or nobody who can put 20,000 shillings, equivalent to 20,000 shillings, for their education in a whole calendar year, are those kids eating? Where are they sleeping? What are they going through? We need to address it realistically. Because then that is a huge, almost 25% of our population. If they're in such dire straits, in such difficulty, how are we addressing it? Now, we need an education system which is preparing these young people for the life they're going to face. If they're going to remain in the village, are we giving them enough skills to be able to improve on what they're going through? Because many of them will not go up beyond P7. But in that period when they're in school, what skills are you giving them? What are you giving them to help them live their lives? So for me, that issue of UPE, we're just scratching the surface. We need to really address it. We need to have a public education system where we can pick the best and be able to develop them, because the greatest strength which we have as a country is the people, right? If we don't invest in the people, if we don't give them the right knowledge and skills, we are actually shooting ourselves in the foot. So we need to have a conveyor system where we can actually get this talent, develop this talent to be able to handle matters in the future. So I have different views on how we'll tackle questions of education. I have different views on how we'll tackle the issue of health. One of the issues I see in health is almost every member of parliament has an ambulance. They're running an ambulance service, which tells you that there's a breakdown in the system of how a patient is supposed to get to the hospital or to the place where they're supposed to be treated. It should not be a member of parliament to run it out of their pockets. So I've seen members of parliament they've overextended themselves and they're desperate. The truth of the matter, they are members of parliament who are desperate, who are in dire straits, who loans are strangling them because of trying to fill in a gap where government was supposed to be. Now, rather than address this issue, people go around the issue. I want to address the issue at a government level. Can we have a government system which provides a health system which works for the people? I don't expect the individual patient in the middle of wherever to be able to transport themselves and make sure that there's medicines in the hospital, make sure that the hospital has the right personnel, that right personnel is well catered for, has the right tools for work. All of those things need to be addressed. Now, in a campaign like this, everything is open game. Let's talk about it. Let's find a way we can address our health system. Let's find a way we can address some of the income disparities which need to be addressed. I have been in some of these issues. I've supported, in my constituency, I supported young people on the issue of borders because the interest rates being provided by some of these companies, for me, is exploitation. How do you charge somebody 4% per month? A year it is 40%, 96%. Somebody is getting boda to earn, to get cash to sustain a family. But they are paying at the end of the 2 years 96% back on top of the cost of the bike. For me, that is wrong. It's being, how does it work in Uganda where who is there to speak for the people? Who can say, no, this is wrong, my people should not be subjected to this kind of exploitation? So I worked out a program there, but of course it ran into problems with other fights, but those are issues which must be discussed in this election. How do you protect the people? How do we create an environment, a safe environment where somebody can thrive in business? There's money to be made, but it does not have to be where somebody is making money at the expense of others going completely under. That's not a sort of system which I want to see.
Let us get deep into the universal education that you've just talked about. Recently, the president is passing around, of course, trying to see the performance of the parish development model. But almost wherever he goes, he talks about the issue of universal education, saying that it has been abused by some of the leaders, the school leaders, the leaders of government schools. Do you think, looking at the 20,000 and how the government is facilitating the infrastructure development of some schools, do you think government schools can serve the purpose within the environment?
Now, you see, for me, I look at it rather differently. And if I go back more from the past, in the past, primary education was largely on the parents. And it is higher up you went where government put in money because it realized that it is very difficult higher up. Now, when you reach university, you're not going to expect a family of peasants to pay the university fees and hostel fees for somebody at university. So government is the one who took responsibility at the top end, not at the bottom end. So I ask myself, are there people in Uganda today, in 2025, who cannot afford to put 20,000 shillings equivalent for each of their children in a calendar year? If they are, then we need to address the poverty question around that issue. But I would much rather have that parent to pay that 20,000. Now, if you take the rough figure of 20,000 shillings per student per year for 10 million kids, and if that one was invested at university tertiary level, I think you'll help people more than 20,000. I would rather you empower the villager to be able to earn enough money to pay the school fees. 20,000 for me is a bit low, but you may look realistically. We want people maybe to be able to pay 90,000 in a year. How do we enhance their incomes? How do we make sure that those kids go to primary school and we're able to get them from primary, but the higher up they go, when we're trying to create that pinnacle, that whatever, that is few will manage. That's where resources should be, right? So it's change. I mean, how do we approach it? If we accept that there are people who cannot raise 20,000 for education, then we need to address why they cannot raise that one more than the 20,000 itself. It's a crisis. If there's a Ugandan in 2025 who cannot afford 20,000 for their kids, all of us are under pressure of school fees. I know the issue of school fees. I am paying fees, my main issue. There are times when, beginning of the year, I had the school fee burden was 3 times what I was expecting. The gross I'm expecting that month, but the school fees is 3 times. We go through that issue of fighting school fees day in, day out. It's a fact of life. But we should now find a way of how we can work better for us. And if we have people in Uganda, 2025, where we said we've kicked poverty, we've done what, and they cannot pay 20,000, then let's stop, reset, and think again how we're going to approach this issue.
Almost 40 years down the road, the NRM government in leadership of this country, what are some of those laws, the worst performance areas that this government has totally failed and the UPC could correct?
You see, I'll not look at it as laws. You look at the tasks to be handled, the work to be done. So, I mean, I'm touched on this issue of education. Clearly, it is not something which seems to have been well thought out. You can bring the issue of PDM. I also think PDM was also not well thought out in that you try to put money before you have a clear concept. I prefer to work through the cooperatives and support the issue of production and not this issue of money, because in my area, there have been very many victims out of the PDM money. Somebody gets money at a very low interest rate, he gets his 1 million. Comes into town, he finds these sharks around the border companies selling border, and they tell him, no, you look like a sharp man. 480,000, you'll get a brand new border. And if you're serious and sharp, 9 months.
You'll be through with it.
You will pay it. Fella looks, he has 1 million. He spends 480,000, he still has
a balance.
And he has a brand new motorcycle. Fellow's in. He doesn't know that he has bought himself a loan at that 4% per month. So you come out of this small frying pan and you jump deep in the fire.
Into the fire.
Now there are many who are coming and say, please, you take this motorcycle. I can't, because they can't meet the cashing, they can't do whatever, and they never read the small print. You default 3 weeks or whatever, that bike is picked, taken to another town, sold. You still have your PDM money to pay, you still have this issue. So PDM was not well thought out, in my view. And I've tried to steer a little bit clear. I helped where I needed to help, where Parliament says the issue of establishing the setting up the accounts and what. I played my role, but I never got deeply involved because I didn't think it's something which is going to deliver people out of poverty. We need to think better on how to deal. I have some ideas, of course, we'll come out to the manifesto on how we're going to deal with this issue of the poverty in the especially in the rural area.
As we conclude, let's look at the justice system in this country. Looking at the abductions, people getting lost, and then the following day they are seen in the dock in courts of law. Do you think the judiciary has served its purpose in this country?
The judiciary are not per se at fault on this issue, but by not speaking strongly against some of those practices, they become accomplices. Because it's not the judiciary who are abducting people. It's not the judiciary who are holding people in different areas and then eventually bringing them to court. But the judiciary needs to make it clear.
But it presides over these cases.
Now that's where the mistake comes, where the judiciary needs to say that if you bring me a tainted case like this, I don't want it. And they should be able to exercise their authority that you bring a tainted case, release the person. Let those who are charged with the responsibility build a proper case. In the interest of public good, let them build a proper case. But many of these cases are half-baked, and they're used on the purpose of frustration and delays. You can spend 4 or 5 years in this judicial system, you're out of circulation, out of the politics, eventually life continues, and you're out of the picture. So that process has been used against maybe some political players, but judiciary needs to find ways of how they can deal with many of these cases expeditiously, and of course avoid this one, which is clearly, blatantly abuse of office. From what I'll say is abuse of office, where somebody is abusing their authority to try to frustrate somebody else.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for sparing your time to share with us your insights on different issues in this country. I might say we are grateful for your time, and we wish you all the best in the upcoming elections, especially on the party basis. Umurebe witu ninyenda kukuma isangu twantugamba n'umuyembezi umunyeshengero ahabwa Rila East Division twantugeza kutera tochi mu shonga zitari zimwe na zimwe umuyihangomu turi kureba ubuzubwa hiburi nangwa n'icyakubasa korwa kurebeka ngo enshongezi zabasa kugonjora onebo sura batureba. You don't get me.
I get you, but I thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I wish to appreciate those who've had time to watch this show. I hope to be back and we can discuss more about the future of Uganda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
Thank you very much. Nihenda kupendeza izoba runji umurebi wa Tayari West nahabu kushazi aho wiri bwawe reka mpamengu umugambo ya Hon.Jimmy Akena uine ebu wabasa kwihamo izoba runji.